Man risks his life going on an adventurous quest for gold inside the Amazonian jungle.
But before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe to HappyWorld, and hit the bell so you'll never miss these great stories.
Fill your life with adventures and not things. Have stories to tell and not the stuff to show. This is what describes the upcoming generation the best. All they strive in life is for adventure. For once, everyone wishes to taste the adventure in life and do something beyond their comfort zone. After all, if we were meant to have stayed in one place, we would have roots and not feet. It's important that we stretch our horizons and dive into this adventurous world. The majority of us don't really take an adventurous toll in our life, but this man opted for an escapade to the jungles of the Amazon. His spree became a famous story not only for his thrilling journey, but for something even he was not prepared for. Watch here to find out what that escapade was and what this man made to the end of it. Did he survive the lush jungle to tell his story to the world? Yossi Ginsberg, often abbreviated to Yosef, is an Israeli adventurer based in Australia. He was 22 years old when his thriving for adventure overtook everything else in life. He was a firm believer of the fact that jobs fill your pocket, but adventures fill your soul. Taking this as the driving force, he embarked upon his grand journey. What he didn't know was that this expedition would turn out to be his worst nightmare. Yosef was born on April 25, 1959, to a couple who survived the war, which gradually meant their shift from Holocaust to Tel Aviv, Israel. Yossi was born and brought up in Tel Aviv, which is the world's first all-Jewish city. Life at Tel Aviv was usual, yet the young Joseph always felt he was missing out on something in life. He was sure he needed to add some spice to his monotonous life when he came across an equally exciting life of Henry Charrier. Ginsberg was born to travel. He never knew what it was to confine oneself in the four walls of a room. For him, life was nothing but a big adventure. While he was in school, he had a keen interest in the geography of the world. Probably even he didn't know that this interest would make him question his existence in life, and all he'll do in the years to come would be traveling and exploring the unknown. Henry Charrier is a French author whose autobiography titled Papillon inspired Yosef to taste some adventure in life. The autobiography was said to be the greatest adventure story of all time. It was a craze among youngsters. It was a life summary of a man who gave a new meaning to wanderlust by escaping the imprisonment on the South American island of French Guiana. The French author's autobiographical account seeped into Ginsberg's veins. He could completely relate himself to the author and took on a thrilling journey towards exploring the world. One of Yosef's main goals during his travels was to find the author Henry Charrier and seek his good luck. But what happens next was something he would never have even thought in his wildest dreams. The very first trip Yosef made was a trip to Africa and Mexico. At that time, he was working as a Navy officer at the Red Sea, but decided to travel to satisfy his thirst. The joy of traveling and the desire to discover the most important things compelled him to wander more. This trip shaped up his life in ways he possibly didn't know it could. The flavor of the unexplored world is beyond amazing. Once you begin to travel, going back isn't easy. Something similar happened with Joseph. The trip to Africa was a thrilling one, but it couldn't satisfy his urge of living a life of his dreams. His ultimate dream was to explore the Amazon rainforests. The biggest adventure one can take is to live the life they wish, and Yosef knew the Amazon forests were calling him now. Before embarking on this risky journey, he had to take some other risks in life. Yosef couldn't wait to dive in the adventure to the Amazon, but to travel one needs a good amount of resources. He completed his Navy training and began working in different professions to make up enough money to support his dream. He worked at a construction work in Norway, fishing in Alaska, and loading and unloading trucks in New York City just to make his dream a reality as early as he could. After working for a year and a half, Yosef could finally make enough money to finance his travels. He was in South America now, which meant he was close to fulfilling his two dreams. The first was to meet a French author, his hero, and another to expedition to the Amazon. Unfortunately, one of his dreams couldn't be fulfilled, but giving up was something Yossi didn't know. Yossi had worked day and night for making it to Latin America as soon as possible, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it on time. It was 1981, and when he reached his inspiration Henry, the author had passed away. Though he desired to meet his favorite author couldn't be fulfilled, Yossi didn't hold on to it for long. He was ready to travel to the Amazon jungles to live his second dream. However, he didn't know that this dream was too harsh. Yosef continued on his journey and hitchhiked his way from Venezuela to Colombia. On the way, he met a fellow backpacker, Marcus Stamm, who was a teacher from Switzerland. The two shared the same passion for traveling and soon turned to good friends. They decided to travel together to La Paz, Bolivia, and from there would head to the Amazon jungles. They didn't know what a life-changing encounter they'd have at the Bolivian capital. After traveling for a week, the two new friends stepped into a beautiful canyon created like a city of La Paz, Bolivia. There they came across an Australian man who claimed himself to be a geologist named Karl Ruprechter. He too was young blood who was in hunt of a hidden gold treasure, buried deep in the heart of an ancient village of Bolivia's remote Amazon jungle. It sounded like an expedition that Yossi always wanted to have. Would they be able to find that gold, or would it be something even more? Yossi and Marcus were excited to join hands with a stranger. They both were thriving for adventure in life, and what could be better than a gold hunt in the heavy, deep, and dark forests of the Amazon? The trio was ready to trek the jungles, and soon they were joined by a photographer named Kevin Gale. He was an American who they came across while trekking in Bolivia. However, the unforeseen also packed its bags with this group. The four new acquaintances didn't waste another second and set off on their Amazonian quest for gold. Soon, only they began feeling like the protagonists of a thrilling travel novel. The three young men followed the directions of the Austrian geologist called Ruprechter by plane, and then by boat to the Amazon jungle. They made their first stop in a village where they were surrounded by horrifying warnings. The village they stopped at was small, indigenous, consisting of Astramias in the remote outskirts of the Amazon. The place was dominated by the tribal community. They stopped there to restock their food and fuel supplies. The locals there warned the young men. They said that they were bound to encounter imminent danger along the way. Many people who often went there didn't pave their way back to life. They were adamant they should rethink their plans. Would the excited backpackers march back? The warnings couldn't make any change in the plans of these highly excited travelers. Despite hearing various incidents of chaos and turmoil, the travelers moved towards the jungle. Soon, only the harsh survival conditions began to cloud them. They ran on severe food shortages and even developed trench foot. Surviving the forest without food and fodder became tough. What next? Did the men give up, or did their plan of exploring the Amazon die to long progressing starvation? Yossi knew that he had to make it to the Amazon at any cost, even if starvation was that cost. Though soon he only realized things wouldn't work like this for long, and the men went back to the village to restock. This time they bought double the last time. Arriving at the village, Carr gave the travelers another idea. He said now they could sail down on a raft to a gold quarry called Plai instead of trekking. Would this plan make for the last attempt? The group could finally make it to the Amazon rainforest. They were getting thrilled day by day, believing they're getting close to the hidden gold treasure. One fine day, suddenly, Karl Ruprechter, the leading geologist, said they were headed straight for San Pedro Canyon, which was a dangerous stretch of rapids, waterfalls, and boulders, not suitable for boating. Only then, for the first time, he told everyone he didn't know how to swim. The revelation came shocking to the fellow ears. Did he just betray and misguide them? Yossi Ginsburg and his fellow travelers couldn't believe what they just heard. They felt that the older man they trusted had deceived them. The team had no clues where to head in this heavy jungle now. Distrusting of Ruprechter and his tales of gold and claims of familiarity with the jungle and passages, the group decided to separate and try to make their respective journeys back. It was not it. The four friends didn't know that it was the last time they were seeing each other. Yossi and Kevin grew really close during this journey and thus decided to stay together and continue rafting on the river while it was decided Carl and Marcus would go by foot. Unfortunately, a rock struck their raft and the boat capsized. Luckily, Kevin made it to the shore, but the currents were too strong and he couldn't reach the ever-adventurous Yosef, and he went down the river. Did he survive? Yosef tried his best to regain his strength to climb up the raft or any tree or branch where he could gather his breath as he was approaching a waterfall. Unfortunately, the waterfall was so high that nothing could help Ginsburg save the fall. He was running into rocks and trees, but all he did was keep his head above the water. Was he able to make up or took his last breath in the waterfall alone? He was having a wild ride and was sure it was his last. The adventure he wanted all his life, he faced it all in just a single day. Luckily, he washed up at a jungle shore. Regaining his senses, he couldn't believe he survived the fall. He was thrilled to survive, but soon only his feeling of exhilaration turned into that of disaster and disrepair. After surviving the perilous waterfall, Yosef realized he was left all alone. The journey, which began with 4 acquaintances, split into 2, and now only he was left, alone and afraid. He had no idea where the remaining fellow mates of his were. His high hopes shattered, and this jungle turned into his worst nightmare. He was in a desperate need of motivation, and something again lifted his spirits. No less than a miracle, the same moment Ginsburg's backpack washed up and he was overjoyed. He took out a book from his bag which his uncle gifted him. This book was believed to save his parents and his uncle's life during the Holocaust. He knew the book would help him survive. He collected his shattered spirits and looked for survival, trusting his instincts, his Navy training, and this book. Yosef had the blood of survivors rushing through his veins. This empowered him in surviving the jungle. Initially, he was very optimistic he'd be able to find Kevin soon, but after traveling upriver for 4 days without any signs of his team members, his hopes were also on the brink of breaking. The haunting loneliness in the deep forest made him question his initial dream and thirst for adventure, as by now he was sure it would cost him his life. Yosef walked miles in the direction he thought would lead him to civilization in damp torn clothes and an empty stomach. The more he walked, the deeper he reached into the jungle. During this time, he faced his very first encounter with a jungle animal, the true rulers of the forest. A wild boar ran behind him for kilometers and even attacked him. Luckily, he could save himself this time, but soon it was about to turn dark again and survival was only going to get harder. The jungle undoubtedly turned even more dangerous at night. All the wild animals would come out and would be searching for food. Though Yosef made sure he walked with a mindless noise and hid himself as best as he could, but only one night he heard some sounds in nearby foliage. Yosef was terrified to see 2 glooming eyes of a jaguar looking at him. That night was the scariest. At this time, his Navy training came in handy. Ginsberg lit up the fire with a lighter to scare the wild jaguar. He knew forest fires were what haunts the wild beings. Fortunately, the jaguar went away, leaving Yosef trembling with fear but safe. He had to face many such encounters like this in the days that followed. Yosef was starving with hunger. The situation was so bad that he would eat anything that came his way. He'd hunt for raw berries, wild fruits, and rare bird eggs in the jungle. Not only this, he even ate monkey's meat to survive. His life depended on his daily scavenging for food. Surviving the jungle became a tough task, and the chance of heading back home was far from possible. The jungle was turning ruthless day by day, and the only thing which was left to be faced was the heavy rains. The Amazon rainforests are subject to heavy rainfall, and they face between 80 and 430 inches of precipitation a year, on average. Everything deadly possible on this planet had made its way to Ginsberg. The Amazon forest faced terrible floods then. Ginsberg was caught with this one, and he thought he would make it just like the fall from the waterfall. He narrowly escaped the flood, and he would have barely caught his breath that he stumbled in a bog of quicksand. This time he was sure the end was near. Yosef once again used his quick instincts and survivor skills to overcome the odds. He knew that even his luck wouldn't favor him anymore if he continued to face such deadly times again and again. Somehow he managed this one as well, but was worrying about his future and the haunting disasters he'd have to face. With every passing day, tracing for food became even harder. It was almost his 3rd week in the Amazon jungle. By now, Yossi was drained completely physically and mentally, losing all hope to survive. It was the toughest week for him as he had no food and had absolutely no energy to move. He was now even suffering as a severely painful skin infection. The pain in his feet was unbearable, and to distract himself from it, Ginsberg shook his head against a tree full of fire ants. He could divert himself from the pain, but this relief was also short-lived as a plane went above him and over the jungle but didn't see him. Ginsberg lost all hope and sank into a muddy bog as it was getting impossible to live and dying was the easiest option. Just when Yosef was about to give up, he started hallucinating about a girl he once loved. A mere thought of her was enough for Yosef to raise his spirits again. He was pleasantly comforted by her apparent image, talked to her, set up camp for her, and imagined he was sleeping next to her. All this made him battle for his continuance. The last resort Ginsberg sought to was to God. When he gave up on everything, he prayed to the mighty and begged for his mercy. He asked for his eternal death as it was unbearable to strive in this dark land. He never knew his dream would taste that way. And then something pleasant and unexpected happened. Lying like a dead man on the shore of a riverbank, Ginsberg heard the sound of a motor. He gained all his strength to reach out with his voice, and what he saw next made him weep in tears. It was Kevin, his friend on the boat, who was found by locals after 5 days. With the help of respective embassies of his missing friends in La Paz, he came to the jungle to rescue them. But what about Carl and Marcus? While Kevin was able to find Ginsberg, there was no sign of Marcus or Carl. By the time Ginsberg was back to his home, he had already lost 35 pounds of weight due to starvation and infection. Furthermore, it took him a month to recover from a traumatizing expedition like this. Ginsberg was more than grateful to Kevin to have not lost hopes in finding him in the deep jungle. Even Ginsberg didn't give up now. He did some more research and with the help of the rescue teams made several attempts to reach the Amazon in hopes of finding his 2 lost friends. His attempts never bore fruit, nor did he ever hear again from Carl and Marcus. Though their tragic times ended, their story did not. Yossi Ginsberg soon became an iconic figure. His survival story was popularized when the Discovery Channel aired the documentary series I Shouldn't Be Alive. Not only this, but in the year 2017, a psychological thriller Jungle was released starring Daniel Radcliffe as Yossi Ginsberg. But that wasn't all. 10 years after getting lost in the Amazon jungle, Ginsberg returned to the Bolivian jungle. He spent nearly 3 years in the 90s arranging for finances and developing an ecotourism industry to help people in Bolivia manage their living. A man who himself suffered great extremities can only think of doing something like this. He had a taste of death almost at the Amazon, and that changed his life forever. Currently, he's a happy family man living with his wife and 4 children. Though he's still adventurous at heart, he now appreciates even the smaller things in life. His dream to visit the Amazon was something he won't be able to forget, ever.